犠牲の多い勝利だったがゆえに、勝者は声を上げて泣いていた。
Capital Lawyers Association. Welcome to the Capital Lawyers Association. Please show me your ID. After verifying your identity, the receptionist brings you to the association's lobby. There, you immediately spot Artem, who has been waiting for you. Your eyes meet, and he comes forward, gently taking your handbag from you.
巻き込んでしまって申し訳ない。
Don't see that. I'm alright. The man looks as composed as ever. His calming presence soothes your frazzled nerves, chasing away the anxiety that had built up from rushing over. After a brief silence, you voice the question on your mind. Why is an inquiry being held? The email mentions something about breach of conduct and a complaint, but
違法行為の方は事実無根だが、告発があったのは事実だ。
his succinct answer only makes the situation seem even more mystifying. While on a business trip, you receive an email from the Lawyers Association. The email writes that Artem has been suspected of professional misconduct and is a person of interest in an anonymous allegation of wrongdoing. The email did not include any details about the complaint that was filed, but only summoned Artem to an inquiry that will be held in the capital. As his work partner, your attendance has been requested as well. Although Artem has contacted you about this, it seems there are some things that he'd rather not say over the phone. Thankfully, you are already in the midst of closing your case at hand. After wrapping up the loose ends, you immediately came over to join him. Is it an act of retaliation by someone involved in the case you've been working on? Artem has been offering legal aid to a client recently. Although it started as a simple case, more and more parties became embroiled in it over time, causing Artem to burn the midnight oil almost every night. At the question, Artem lowers his gaze, hesitation creeping over his features.
ああ、それと私の父とも関係しているかもしれない。
With uncle? You blurt out in surprise. You still have a ton of questions in your mind, but then you hear loud footsteps coming from the other end of the lobby.
あなたがあの有名な左京弁護士ですね。お会いできて光栄です。今回の査問会を担当する岩谷正栄と申します。お二人ともどうぞ応接室へご移動ください。
Waiting room. Having identified himself as the inquiry officer in charge, Jung shows you and Artem to the waiting room. He gestures to the couch by the side, inviting the two of you to have a seat.
そう緊張なさらないでください。正式な査問会はまた後日に行いますから、今日はあくまでこれまでの情報を確認しに来ただけです。
You and Artem seat yourselves on the couch, and Jung kindly begins the conversation across the slim, narrow glass coffee table.
こちらの情報によりますと、左京さんは近頃、ネット融資の被害者たちに法律援助をしてるそうですね。
はい。
左京さんほどの人が、まさか無償で援助を提供していたとは。道理で教会から表彰されるわけです。
Jung chuckles half-heartedly, his eyes devoid of mirth. Then he takes out a document and pushes it toward you and Artem. You look at the document. It's a recently published statutory interpretation draft relating to repressive measures taken on illegal peer-to-peer money lending.
この新法案のことは、 きっと二人もご存知ですね。
As a lawyer, it's a given that you'd pay attention to every new law passed. When it was published, the law firm had immediately organized a study group to parse and analyze it. Once a new statutory interpretation comes into effect, it is only a matter of course that dubious peer-to-peer money lending organizations will be severely impacted. As the new legislation will have far-reaching implications and involve strict regulations, it created an uproar the moment it was published. Amid well-founded concerns and discussions, there is no lack of felonious companies taking advantage of the chaos for personal gain. The one heading the implementation of the draft is Mr. Brian Wing, the current Chief Justice and also...
失礼しました。例の法案を作ったのは、左京さんのお父様でしたね。前々から情報をもらっていたからこそ、こうして積極的に被害者支援を行っていたのですか。
Melis laces Jung's case, which is locked onto Artem. Despite this being the two men's first meeting, for some reason, the former has taken a decisively hostile attitude toward the latter. However, Jung's goading remarks merely makes Artem raise his brows.
社会的弱者に法律援助を提供することも、最新の法律に注目することも、弁護士ならば誰でもすることです。私の父が誰であろうと関係ありません。他にもおっしゃりたいことがあれば、遠慮なくどうぞ。
ではお言葉に甘えて。先日、最高裁長官が職権を乱用し、息子の利益のために法案を作ったとの告発がありました。左京さん、協会はあなたが立場を利用して事前に情報を入手し、法外な利益を得ようとしていると疑っています。
Your heart sinks. You suddenly realize what Artem had meant when he said that this crisis might have something to do with his father. Artem doesn't refute Jung's accusations immediately. Instead, he casts his eyes down in quiet contemplation. What you can do now is... Did the complainant present any evidence?
二人が親子であることは確認済みです。弁護士さんは他にも証拠が必要だと。
So, there is no substantive evidence, and the investigation is simply based on the fact that there are immediate family members.
告発を受ければ調査を行う。これが協会のルールです。
Since Artem brought up Uncle just now, he must already have had an inkling of the circumstances. If so, he must have his reasons for keeping silent now. I don't have the full picture of what's going on. If I give in to impulse and speak, it will only give others a weapon to wield against us. Better wait and see for now. After thinking it through, you suppress the urge to do something, adopting a wait-and-see approach instead. Seeing that you and Artem have both elected to keep your own counsel, Jung chuckles slyly. It is clear that he's an old hand at dealing with situations like this.
ご心配なく。我々は告発を一方的に信じているわけではありませんし、しっかりと事実に基づいた調査を行うつもりです。なので、今日はここまでにして、2日後の査問会でお会いしましょう。当日、どのような説明をされるのか、しっかりと考えておいてくださいね、左京さん。
With those parting words, Jung leaves the waiting room. Despite learning of the whistleblower report, Artem has presented a calm and self-possessed front the whole time. He turns to you and lightly presses the back of his hand against your cuff in reassurance.
心配しなくていい。うまく処理しておく。
We will take care of it. You correct him firmly. Baseless accusations won't amount to anything, so I'm not particularly worried. Did you already know this was going to happen, though?
いや、連絡を受けて、それとなく予想していただけだ。現状、未解決の案件は1件しかない上に、依頼主は被害者側の人間だ。となれば、相手は加害者側のネット融資業者などに絞られる。それに、彼らの事業を脅かしているのは、まさしくあの新法案だからな。おそらくだが、彼らは私の父を標的にしているのだろう。家族関係は非公開の情報だが、入手できないものではない。
Then how are things with Uncle now?
新法案に対して反対の声が多く上がっているとは聞いているが、それ以上のことは何も知らされていないな。
Suddenly, the sound of Artem's phone vibrating cuts your conversation short. He glances down at the screen.
父だ。きっとこっちの状況を知ったのだろう。
He stares hesitantly at the caller's name on the screen, but eventually picks it up after a few seconds.
もしもし。はい。もう首都にいます。彼女も一緒です。
Your name seems to have come up in the conversation. Artem puts the call on speaker, after which you hear a no-nonsense voice come through the phone.
ああ、なら車を向かわせる。直接会って話そう。
In person? You turn to Artem in surprise, only to see that he is no less puzzled than you are.
今からですか？さすがにこのタイミングは避けた方が。
その必要はもうない。
The man on the other end of the line replies assertively.
わかりました。
Study. 20 minutes after the call, a modest black car pulls up and sends you and Artem to Brian's residence in the capital. The manor is decorated in fusion of understated elegance and rustic charm. The only thing that stands out is a wall of books, a clear reflection of what the master of the house indulges in. Brian isn't home at the moment. According to his secretary who showed you and Artem in, he had called for a press conference at the last minute and even arranged for a live broadcast of it. In the meantime, you and Artem are to wait for him here. Phew. You breathe a quiet sigh of relief when you hear that Brian won't be home so soon. Even though you and Artem are already engaged, you haven't had the chance to properly call in on him as his son's fiancée this whole time. Because of this, you don't feel quite at home around Brian like how you do around Kimberly, especially not when your interaction with him has been largely limited to reading about his exploits as Chief Justice in the news.
記者会見か。
Artem murmurs contemplatively, his brows furrowing. What's wrong?
このタイミングでということは、新法案に関する何かを話すつもりなんだろうな。
Didn't Uncle's secretary mention just now that the press conference will be broadcast live? Why don't we watch while we wait?
ああ、そうしよう。
Taking a seat beside Artem, you take out the tablet and navigate to a live stream of the press conference. On camera, Brian earnestly responds to the reporter's barrage of questions, patiently clarifying the contentious clauses of the new regulations one by one.
新しい法解釈を出したのは違法なネット融資による被害を防ぐためです。今社会全体から意見を募っている段階ですから、皆様どうか貴重なご意見をお聞かせください。
In law school, Brian is well regarded by the professors as an approachable person with a no-nonsense attitude towards scholarly pursuits. When facing the press, he presents himself as an impartial and respected lawmaker. Every word he utters conveys calm conviction, convincing his audience to put their trust in him. Uncle's candid explanation should be able to dispel most people's misconceptions toward the new regulations. You remark as you look at Artem. However, his brows are still furrowed, and his voice drops to a troubled whisper.
確かに、世論の沈静化は図れるかもしれないが、これでは父さん自身が矢面に。
As if to prove Artem right, at the press conference, a reporter suddenly shoots a barbed question at Brian.
先日、身内の利益のために法案を推進したという告発があったそうですが、それについて何か説明はありますか？
The reporter's words instantly create a furor. Staff members quickly step forward to remove the reporter, but a man under the spotlight stops them. His voice rises and falls rhythmically as he speaks into the microphone, his carefully enunciated response reaching every corner of the room.
裁判官もただの人である以上、家族を利用すれば脅すのはたやすいでしょう。ですが、事実無根の脅迫程度で、この国の放送人が屈するとは思わない方がいい。法律とはこの世の根幹です。誰かの私利私欲のために利用されるなんてことは絶対にあってはなりません。なので皆さん、どうか不当な言論に惑わされず、法律と司法が持つ公正性を信じてください。告発にあったことが事実か否か、それはすぐに判ずることです。
With that, the press conference comes to an end, and the screen turns black. You can't help but muse over the reporter's mention of the complaint filed against Brian and Artem. Now that word of the complaint has leaked, the press is going to have a field day. That reporter sure is well informed.
いや、今回のことは誰かが情報を流したんだろう。
You mean the peer-to-peer moneylenders? It doesn't take more than a moment for you to understand what Artem is implying. The unlawful moneylenders will definitely do all they can to thwart the approval of the statutory interpretation draft, and this period of public feedback is the best time for them to do it.
ああ、それこそ査問会も彼らの計画の一部かもしれないな。取り調べることで告発を事実だと思わせた後、私たちの家族関係を公表する。そうすることで大衆は自然と父の公平性を疑うようになる。
The Lawyers Association will be impartial about this, won't they? Or do you think... Even as you give voice to your doubts, you've already figured out the crux of the matter. There is no doubt that the Lawyer Association will remain impartial, but Jung, on the other hand, the motivations for his animosity toward Artem might be worth looking into. Fear quietly takes root in your heart, and your blood runs cold. This means the one they're really targeting is... Glaring car headlights flash by the windows for a fleeting moment before disappearing. Shortly after, you hear the whir of an engine as the driver turns it off. The doors open and Brian, who was just at the press conference a while ago, strides in. Corridor. Beyond the window, night has already fallen. Ebony feathered birds caught in the shadow of the foliage, flying in circles as if spying on the occupants of the brightly lit house. The light on the other end of the hallway flicker on. As footsteps approach, you catch snatches of a brief exchange between the two people who have just entered the house.
検事総長が到着されたようです。 今晩の面会はキャンセルしますか？
その必要はない。予定通りにしてくれ。
承知しました。それと、先ほどの記者ですが、所属先の新聞社から謝罪の電話があり、今後厳しく取り締まるとのことです。
そうか。
His reply, though quiet, is enough to let the secretary know how they should follow up on the matter. As the next wall lamp lights up the hallway, the secretary raises another concern, albeit with some uncharacteristic hesitation this time.
すでに複数のメディアが会見を取り上げて報じており、ネット上でも議論が広がっています。
However, the words don't garner a response. Instead, the man leading the way suddenly stops in his tracks, causing the secretary to look at him from behind in confusion. In the dimly lit area between the wall lamps in front, the secretary sees a shadowy figure bending over. He picks up something resembling a matte black razor blade, yet also like an odd bit of paper that had been accidentally left behind. It is only when the man lays the blade-like silhouette in a suspended pot of clivia that the secretary realizes that it is just a diseased leaf that had fallen off. The imbalance of light and dark had distorted a soft evergreen plant into sinister shadows, making even the silhouette of a helpless leaf seem like monstrous claws against the wall. The secretary's gaze subconsciously lingers on the plant. However, the man in front has already moved on without a second thought.
まあ、そろそろ始めるとしよう。
Study. The conversation dies down. As the footsteps come closer and closer, you direct your gaze to the study door. The middle-aged man leading the way is dressed neatly in a suit, with a cultured and self-possessed air around him. Despite having had a hectic schedule today, he shows no sign of fatigue. On the contrary, his eyes are aglow with bright conviction. Seeing him walk in, you and Artem rise from your seats.
父さん、
Hello, uncle. You subconsciously straighten your back. Even though you are now a part of the family, you can't help but become nervous in front of Brian, as though a student toward a teacher.
どうぞ、おかけください。
After receiving further instructions from Brian, the secretary leaves. Brian then takes a seat behind the desk, where he casts an impassive look at Artem.
首都へ来ていたのなら連絡くらいよこしなさい。告発の件は私を狙ったものだろうが、査問会はお前を巻き込むためのものだ。
分かっています。
Artem nods in acknowledgement. Now that Brian has broached the subject, he too begins to analyze the circumstances surrounding his father and himself. His calm and rational demeanor no different from his usual self at work.
法案の話題性を利用し、父さんと私の関係に大衆の注目を集める。下劣なやり方ですが、確かに効果的です。ただ、弁護士協会が声明を出せば、それも容易に沈めることができる。火が燃え広がる前に、うまく処理しておきます。
そこまで分かってるならなおのこと、お前が巻き込まれる必要がないことも理解しているだろう。
Brian's calm but firm statement carries an air of authority that is hard to argue against.
査問会の件は私の方で対処しよう。その代わり、君たちは明日にでも首都を出てくれ。
首都を出る？
Leave? The older man in front of you has made the decision for you and Artem, apparently leaving no room for debate or refusal. Although the words surprised Artem, he quickly recovers his usual composure.
父さん、その必要はありません。岩谷正恵さんとも会ってきましたが、彼なら私でも十分対処できますし、少なからず あなたの助けになるはずです。
お前の能力はよく理解している。だが、それは相手とて同じことだ。
Brian chuckles softly in reassurance, but as he goes on, his voice takes on a somber tune, almost as if he's already in a joust against the unseen mastermind pulling the strings.
相手を侮るな。岩谷は首都で太いパイプを形成している。相手の言葉をそのまま受け止めてはいけない。表舞台に立っている人間の裏には、必ずその背中を押している存在がいるものだ。
私は誰のことも侮ってはいませんよ。いかなる状況であれ、弁護士協会は必ず公正な判断を下す。私はそう信じているだけです。
Artem explains earnestly. Behind the desk, Brian's smile doesn't falter, yet if one were to look closely, they would recognize the skepticism in his eyes.
そのようなものがあったら、君たちは今この場にはいなかっただろうな。
The overhead light shines down on both men, casting shadows so close to each other, yet seemingly 1,000 miles apart. You cast your eyes down at the floor, even though you would love to speak up in support of Artem. The suffocating tension in the room offers you no opportunity to do so. As the night grows darker, a glimpse of the clock on the wall seems to serve as a silent reminder to Brian.
これは法廷の外で行う戦争だ。介入すれば深みにはまる。だが、二人の安全くらいは私が保証しよ
う。どうするつもりですか？まさか、条件を提示して話し合うつもりでは。
そうだと言ったら、どうする？
Brian counters, his words heavy with unspoken implications. He leans back into the chair, looking past the vintage bronze desk lamp straight at Artem across from his as if he can already predict what his son is about to say. With his clasped hands resting on his knees, Artem responds to the rhetorical questions with calm neutrality, keeping his emotions fully in check.
確かに、それが一番効率のいい手段かもしれません。仮に、いかなる犠牲を払うことになろうと、法案さえ可決されれば、すべてに価値があったと言えるでしょう。ですが、私のせいで父が折れたとなれば、息子が弱点だと公言するようなものです。彼らは間違いなく味を占め、今後も似たような手段を使ってきます。その上、もし交渉の内容が公にされたら。
As though an outsider looking in, Artem analyzes the situation rationally, narrating the worst possible scenario in the calmest way ever. He dissects the current state of affairs, weighing the pros and cons like a risk-benefit assessment.
下手に出て調整した法律にどれだけの公平さが担保されているのか。このような判断を下した最高裁長官に信頼する価値はあるのか。彼が守ろうとしているのは本当に国民なのか、それとも家族の方なのか。事情を知らない者が結果だけを聞いたとき、どれだけの人が父さんのことを信じ続けてくれるでしょ
う。Pin-drop silence fills the study after Artem finishes. Such harsh words, yet only spoken out of desire to protect a loved one. You sigh. Uncle, I know you don't want Artem to be tangled up in this mess in the capital, but it's too late. He's already in deep. Artem and I, we can't just stay on the sidelines like it doesn't concern us. Outside, a wild wind begins to blow, like a treacherous tempest ready to shatter the peace in the study and claim the light overhead. With a sharp whistle, a sudden gust of wind blows through the slightly ajar windows, riffling noisily through the pristine papers on one end of the desk. Brian quickly sets the paperweight on top of the papers and is about to shut the windows, However, Artem has already reached over, his arm venturing beyond the window sill and into the dark to grasp the bronze window handle. Brian lets out a soft, poignant chuckle as he watches him close the window, shutting out the howling wind.
お前はまだ若いな。本物の脅迫というのを知らないようだ。
いえ、脅迫なら体験済みだ。
Artem calmly replies as if he had already seen those words coming. His quiet gaze lingers momentarily on his reflection on the darkened window panes before he turns and meets his father's head-on.
父さんは家族を守りたいだけでなく、理想も曲げようとしない。その結果が自身を危険な目に遭わせていたとしても、またあの時みたいに何も言わないつもりなんですか？
The last time, Artem's pointed words confuse you, but not Brian. He falls silent, lost for words. Artem stands tall in front of the fog-lit window, like an impenetrable barrier keeping the vast darkness at bay and stopping it from overpowering the light.
父さんを守るためにしろ、弁護士協会の人間として動くにしろ。今回、私は私のやり方で対処させてもらいます。
お前のやり方？
Artem doesn't respond immediately. Instead, he gazes wordlessly at the adjudicator's sword badge. The metal badge catches the overhead light, its glint piercing through the gloomy night like a sword of light, guiding him to the answer he seeks.
私の思う公平は間違いなく存在しています。崇高なものが守られ、下劣なものが罰せられるのはもちろん、それを実現しようと旗を持つ者の名誉も守られなければならない。
A brief silence later, as if to spur the people in the room into action, the red light on the intercom in the study starts to flash soundlessly. Brian reaches out an arm to pick up the call. As his finger hovers over the button, he pauses and looks at you. You stiffen instinctively, but when your eyes meet his, unlike the look of harsh reproach you'd fear, you find that his eyes are warm and kind.
あなたは、それでいいのかい？
There was no context to the question, but you immediately understand. He is asking if you have made up your mind to face the inquiry hand in hand with Artem. Needless to say, the answer is yes. You and Artem have ridden out countless storms together, and this one will not be an exception. You nod firmly at Brian. Yes, Artem and I will get through this together. Just like what he sees, we want to protect you in our own way.
そうか。では、資料を用意しよう。
Brian finally presses the intercom button and answers the call, instructing the person on the other end of the line to prepare the documents. Shortly after, the secretary opens the door and enters the study with copies of the documents. They pass the files to you and Artem.
自力で対処すると決めた以上、あらゆる準備をしておくことだ。
We will.
はい。
Artem sounds as if there is more he wants to say. For a while, he gazes at Brian, but ultimately chooses to hold his tongue. Knowing that Brian has other matters that require his attention, you and Artem bid goodbye. Street. By the time you leave Brian's residence, night has fully fallen on the city. Nearby, a night market bustles just outside the villa district. The bright lights from the stretch of stalls illuminate the road all the way to the darkness at the end. You and Artem stroll down the street, drawing closer to each other as you do. Out of the blue, he takes your arm and gently steers you to a peaceful corner away from the hubbub.
さっきは無理をさせてしまったな。
Artem, you look up into his apologetic eyes. Don't feel bad. It was fine. I was just thinking that people take it for granted that being in positions of power means the Chief Justice and his son must be able to act as they please when these people have never truly seen this side of you or your father. When one looks beyond all the differences in opinions, they are just trying to protect each other like any father and son.
日頃からああではなく、今回が特別で。
Artem sounds a little down.
父がまた何も言わず、すべてが終わってから打ち明けるんじゃないかと。
Like the last time that you mentioned just now.
ああ。
You keep quiet, looking at him and waiting patiently for him to open up to you.
父が裁判長になったばかりの頃、違法組織が事件を起こして、担当していた父が脅迫を受けたんだ。しかも、脅迫状には私と母のことも書かれていて、当時の父は巻き込まないよう、極力私たちとの連絡を避けていたそうだ。あの時、私は首都にいたにもかかわらず、父が危険な目に遭っていることをかけらも知らなかった。
You were in the capital too? Did you meet with any danger? You can't help but be alarmed. Artem shakes his head reassuringly with a smile.
ああ、大丈夫だ。当時、私がそこにいたのは、偶然にも、教会関係の用事でな。
The Lawyers Association?
ああ。教会では、毎年学院の生徒に賞を与える習慣があって、私はその年の受賞生徒だったんだ。それから、授賞式の当日が、ちょうど私の誕生日だったこともあって、珍しく、自分から両親に招待状を出したんだ。
In the lobby of the Lawyers Association, the vintage clock chimes 4 times. The award ceremony has long since ended, and even the last few guests mingling with one another are starting to leave. The star of the ceremony, however, is still there. He stares at the bouquet at the staircase by the corner, his eyes downcast. One by one, the cheekily dressed guests depart. He watches them leave just like how he had stood there expectantly scanning the guests streaming in a few hours ago. Deep down, he knows there isn't any point to waiting any longer. Thankfully, his mentor makes no move to persuade him to leave. On the contrary, he prattles away about everything under the sun, kindly drawing a veil over the young man's stubborn and hopeful wit.
お前の両親もこの賞をもらっていたから、お前も確実に選ばれるとは思っていたが、安藤のやつ、まさか今日に限って海外出張とはな。仕事が重なってなければ、きっと駆けつけただろうに。そうだ。さっきお前が壇上で話してた時、何人もの教授がお前の指導教員になりたいと押しかけてきたぞ。残念だったな。お前が10代だった頃から指導教員は私の仕事だ。
The remark makes Artem smile, though it doesn't do much to tear his gaze away from the departing guests.
先生、からかわないでください。
はあ。
Knowing what or who Artem is waiting for, Neil Hume sighed. He braces his hands against his knees and bends over, looking straight into Artem's downcast eyes.
仕方ない。先生が味方をしてやろう。戻ったらメールで新一のやつを叱ってやるよ。約束しといて来ないとは何事だってな。にしても、誕生日プレゼントだけはしっかり置いていくんだな。どうする左京。開けて確認してみるか。
Neil gestures to the gift box wrapped with a gold and red ribbon. Artem's grip on the box subconsciously tightens.
なんだ？家に戻ってから開けたいのか？それとも、もう少し待ってたいか？
As if trying to cheer a child up, Neil punctuates every word he utters with exaggerated conviction, so much so that Artem can't help but hold out a hope for the impossible. After all, what if it does come true? Sunlight streams into the lobby, casting a warm glow on Artem's cheeks. He averts his gaze, his voice trailing off to nothing, but Neil doesn't wait for him to continue.
ならこうしよう。今から新一に電話をして、そのなんちゃら会議とやらがいつ終わるのか聞くんだ。
先生、それはさすがに。
Hearing his littering, Neil strides off, phone in hand. He turns the corner and disappears from Artem's side, leaving behind only clusters of lilies that seem pitifully lonely in the empty lobby. By some coincidence, the Lawyers Association has chosen to decorate the premises with lilies today. The flower is a symbol of purity and dignity, yet hidden beyond the surface, out of most people's view, are the unsung sacrifices it makes to preserve its pristineness.
今日はもう十分すぎるほどわがままを言ったな。
Artem murmurs to himself in the now quiet reception lounge, his eyes downcast. He reflects on his behavior, looking into his heart. After identifying the part of himself where feelings had overcome rationality, he detaches from it and calmly analyzes it, eventually coming to a conclusion.
沈黙は時にある種の要求とも言える。知ってはいたが、自分がそんなことをする日が来るとは。
He waits quietly in the light of the setting sun, aware that he is still here only because there is somebody who loves and cares for him enough to go along with his willfulness. Artem holds up the gift box slightly. By its weight, he guesses that it likely contains a fountain pen, perhaps accompanied by a card written with a carefully thought out message from the heart. And that's good enough, he tells himself.
そろそろ帰るか。
Suddenly, he hears footsteps nearby. Artem looks up hopefully, only to see Neil Hume and no one else. The disappointment in Artem's eye makes Neil drag his feet, unsure of how he should break the news to the crestfallen youth. Clearing his throat awkwardly, he quickly suppresses his feelings and lets out a laugh with forced lightness.
なんだ。新一は来れそうにないらしいから、今日のところは宿まで送ってやろう。なんなら明日の便も早めて、このまま空港へ向かうか。
そうしてください。
This time, he answers without missing a beat.
私がもっと注意深く周りを見ていたら、先生がずっと緊張していたことも、事故を恐れていたことにも気づけたかもしれない。結局、父は最後まで何も言わず、私と母が事情を知ったのは何年も後のことだった。
Artem's voice gradually fades to a whisper as he recounts the past until he finally finishes. It's almost as if he wishes the night breeze could carry his wistful sentiments to his younger self and tell him of the circumstances that he and his family would face. Getting presented with an award at a ceremony that happens to fall on his birthday, not to mention the very same award that both his parents received, these coincidences made that day special. It's no wonder he looked forward to it. Something tells you that Artem must have been hoping for more than just having his father attend the ceremony, but with this cloak of emotional letdown over his memories, you can barely scratch the surface of the thoughts he had back then. You're not expecting to pick up on all of it. You want to hold his hand in yours, to melt down the shackles of those memories with your warmth and bring him back to the present. But your hand comes into contact with fabric and you realize you grabbed onto his sleeve. At least that was something. Sliding your fingers down the light fabric toward his palm, you find Autumn reaching for your hand. He weaves his fingers between yours, becoming the one to comfort you instead.
わかってるさ。当時のことは、私にはどうにもできなかっただろう。だが、今回はそうではない。
It is only when you are halfway down the street that you notice the street light ahead has gone out, leaving only its inky black shadow behind. You see resplendent lights some distance ahead and even where you came from, but there is hardly anything to illuminate the dark alley you are in. Leaning against the faulty streetlight, Autumn begins to see something in a barely audible voice. His words dissipate into the night the moment they are uttered.
家族の存在は父さんの弱みだ。もしそこにつけ込まれるようなことがあれば、脅迫、誹謗中傷、そういったことが何度でも繰り返される。悪人側が好き放題に暴れ、秩序を守ろうとする側が譲歩する状況。そんなこと、絶対にあってはならない。
I know. Autumn vocalized the very thing that you have been worrying about. Something like this is likely to happen again in the future.
だから、私は受け身でいるつもりはないし、ちょうどそこへ利用できそうな突破口が現れた。
You mean Jung?
ああ。今日初めて会ったというのに、彼の態度は完全に告発者側のそれだった。
That does sound off. He should have been neutral and impartial coming into this inquiry, especially when he's overseeing on behalf of the association. Don't tell me he's...
それと、もし本気で私が黒幕だと考えているのなら、左門会のような大事なことを他人任せにはしないだろう。もし何かでミスがあれば、後の計画が全てパーになってしまうからな。
Could Jung be... Considering how this inquiry is the first step those peer-to-peer lenders need to get past, it is not unlikely that they've already bribed Jung to guarantee an outcome in their favor.
おそらくな。
Bribe or not, we're sure to find our breakthrough on him. We should look into Jung once we get back. Looks like we're back to investigative work and teasing out clues to get to the truth behind it all. A sliver of moonlight gleams in Artem's eyes, and the corner of his mouth turned up almost imperceptibly in this murky night.
ああ。私たちの得意分野だ。
Now that you have a rough plan in mind, it feels as though you've found a ray of light that would guide you out of this darkness toward the dawn of hope. You soon come to the end of the unilluminated stretch of alleyway and find yourself back on the brightly lit street. I hope we can sort this out soon, because if we don't, we'll have to celebrate your birthday here in the capital. There isn't anything wrong with making birthday preparations in the capital, but with the inquiry in a couple of days, you cannot help but feel as though a sword is hanging over your head.
一緒にいられれば、私はどこだって構わない。
How can? Just as you are about to channel your disapproval and defend your stand on how it should not matter, you hear something behind you. A vendor pushes their well-stocked flower cart along the street, wheels rattling as the cart passes you. Autumn pulls you in a little closer by the waist, making sure you are not in the path of the flower cart. Along with the scent of flowers wafting down the street, a thought also drifts into your mind. The road ahead may be a long and unlit path into the darkness and night, but vibrant spring blooms within reach make a great gift nonetheless. If I don't end up preparing your birthday gift in time, would you settle for flowers first? Autumn tilts his head to the side, appearing to be seriously considering your offer. Turning around to look at the flower cart that is now parked in the corner, he chuckles lightly in response.
ああ、そうしてくれるか。
Yeah. The way he values and chooses to remember an arrangement as mundane as this makes your mind go blank for a moment, though your heart also swells with happiness at the sweet gesture. Hotel room. Deciding to define your case with something you'll find on June, both you and Artem dive straight into fact-finding the minute you get back to your hotel.
融資の被害に遭った人物と連絡がついた。あったことをありのまま話してくれるそうだ。やはり最大の障害は岩谷になりそうだな。
I've poured over the files from Uncle. It looks like Jung has been the spokesperson for those shady peer-to-peer lenders for a very long time now. He's a regular guest at Social Mixer hosted by the peer-to-peer lending companies, where he uses his position and influence as a senior attorney to promote their services. Will this be enough for the association to assign us a new inquiry officer? Shaking his head, Artem leans over you to read a file on the computer.
確証があれば別だが、それについては向こうも言い訳を準備しているだろ
う。Evidence, huh? People only go through the trouble when they have something to gain. I'm sure Jung benefited in some way for plugging those peer-to-peer lending companies.
前に法律援助をしていた際、関連会社の入出金履歴を調べるべく、裁判所に調査許可を申請しておいた。
Artem then points to a list of peer-to-peer lenders with ties to Jung, gesturing a connection between the two.
偶然にも、ここにある数社は、どれも名前が挙がっていた。ちょうど許可が下りたから、明日にでも調べに行こ
う。Okay. Lowering his hand, Artem strokes your hair as a tender affection fills his eyes.
きっと数日は忙しくなる。今日はもう休んでくれ。
Not yet. I want to do a mock run of the inquiry.
確認？
Yeah, the association's inquiry is entirely new to me. I don't want to fumble on the day. And it doesn't help knowing we're up against Jung. Artem lowers his head in thought for a moment before nodding.
そうだな。彼のことだから、通常の質疑応答以外にも、様々な手でプレッシャーをかけてくるだろう。君の言う通り、備えておくに越したことはないな。
Dragging a chair over with one hand, Artem seats himself opposite you and you feel somewhat intimidating gaze boring into you.
おそらくだが、相手は必ずこの質問を投げかけてくるはずだ。左京弁護士がこの案件を引き受けたタイミングで、彼の父親が関連する法案を推しているようですが、これはただの偶然ですか？
As Artem gets into character for the mock inquiry, you find yourself more disturbed by the frosty mood in the room than the mental pressure you expected. Either the air conditioning is set too strong, or it's the deliberate hardening of his voice that now sounds icy and unfeeling. Something is quick freezing the room, spreading the cold to every nook and cranny. Clenching your fingers against your palm to calm yourself down, you collect your thoughts, then go on to point out a logical flaw in the question. The draft is still open to public feedback, and there is some time before it can be passed into law. By then, Mr. Wing would have long wrapped up his legal aid case.
仮にこの案件が終わったとしても、また新たに類似した案件を引き受ける可能性もありますよね。
But the man before you trains his uncharacteristically apathetic gaze on you, ready to jump in and twist any potential loophole in your responses to bolster his argument.
質問を変えましょうか。仮に父親から恩恵を受けたことがないとしても、 彼のことを知る人間がすり寄ってくることはあるのでは？
Mr. Wang has never gone around telling others about his family background.
だから何だと言うんです？謙虚さをアピールしたいのか、それとも言えない事情でもあるのか。
He cuts off the rebuttal that you've instinctively formulated in your head. The way Artem fires these questions so effortlessly makes you wonder for a moment if he has long realized this is how people think of him. After getting a hang of the flow, the tension eases as you gradually regain your composure, increasing the pace of your responses. The barrage of questions fired one after the other in quick succession soon pulls you and your subconscious mind into the inquiry, engaging you so thoughtfully that you forget this is but a mock run. Just when you think there is no foreseeable end to this aggressive questioning, Artem leans forward with a gentle smile.
さすがに飲み込みが早いな。これで君も左門会の傾向が分かっただろう。次は逆の立場でやってみて、相手の狙いを探ってみるとしようか。
Artem looks at you encouragingly, but you do not take him up on his offer to play the role of the inquiry officer. Going by your current progress, the questions that follow will zero in on Artem's family background, more specifically to defame and slander him, exactly what your opponent hopes to achieve. Artem would do everything in his power to protect his family, and this happens to be a fatal weakness others can take him down with. You finally realize what he meant earlier by psychological pressure.
大丈夫か？
Concern fills Artem's eye when he sees you frozen in place.
疲れたのか？それとも緊張しているのか？
It's neither of those. Likely perceiving your apprehension, Artem comes to kneel before the couch, easing out the creases in your brow with his fingers. Your eyebrows had been knitted together, something he noticed even if you fail to realize it yourself.
私のことなら大丈夫だ。君に聞かれなくとも岩谷は聞いてくるだろうし、いずれは立ち向かわなくてはならない。今はとにかく問題の解決を優先し、他のことは。
Artem then softens his tone.
他のことは気にしなくていい。
You wrap your arms around his waist and nuzzle into the crook of his neck. The tip of your nose brushes against the thin fabric of his shirt as you sniffle slightly. They may not matter to you, but you shouldn't have to put up with them. You take a few moments to calm your emotions before shyly pulling away from his warm embrace. I've gotten the hang of it. We can stop practicing already. Artem chuckles in resignation and leans toward you. His lips draw close, only to pause just inches away from your forehead, but the kiss never lands. All you feel is his warm breath lingering on your skin. You space out for several moments while waiting until you hear Artem slowly let out a sigh.
ああ、ここまでにしよ
う。Waiting room. Soon it is the day of the inquiry. The inquiry is proceeding reasonably well thanks to the mock run you had with Artem. You soon realize Jung has long prepared the conclusion to close the inquiry with because none of your responses matter to him.
新法の解釈が公表されるまで最高裁長官とは会っていないとおっしゃいましたが、この時代連絡手段など多岐にわたります。会わなくとも情報を渡す方法はいくらでもあるでしょう。
私たちの間で交わされた連絡は機密事項には含まれていません。それに異議があるならどうぞ証拠をご提示ください。
Jung has been putting on a show of perusing the document in his hands. Upon hearing that, he clicks his tongue in disapproval and smoothly issues a veiled threat.
左京さん、その態度はいかがなものかと。関連部門と協会は今回の告発に注目していますし、マスコミも嗅ぎ回っています。これ以上お父様の立場を危うくさせるおつもりですか？少なくともここ数年分のメール、ショートメッセージ、通話記録を提示しないと、誠意ある対応とは認められませんね。
数年分？
当然です。今はなくとも過去に機密を漏らしている可能性もありますから。しっかり調査しておかないと誰も納得しませんよ。それに、左京さんは一貫してご自分の出自を公開してこなかったと聞いてますが、知られて困ることでもあったのですか？
Mr. Jung, I understand that whistleblower report isn't backed by any supporting evidence, even as we speak, so please enlighten me. Why are we still asked to submit all kinds of documents to prove our innocence in this matter? Right after you ask that question, Jung turns to look at you. You see a hunter who has long let out his trap, simply waiting for his prey to walk straight into it.
弁護士さん、あなたは左京さんとどういったご関係で？
We are partners where work is concerned.
ほう。ではプライベートでは？こちらが知る限り、あなた方は婚約関係にあるそうですが、無条件で彼のことを擁護しかねない以上、あなたの発言には一切の信憑性がありません。
You.
婚約者が同僚にいて、父親が最高裁の長官ですか。これ以上に楽しくて楽な仕事はないでしょうね。
Behind glasses, his ruthless gaze sweeps between you and Artem as he eloquently drops antagonizing remarks. Artem looks up coldly, speaking to divert the relentless and scathing words back to himself.
我々の関係と私の家庭関係において後ろめたい部分などはありません。公表しなかったのは家族のプライベートを守るためです。
ふん、なるほど。守るものが多いんですね。
John sneers and picks up the documents before him, carelessly flipping through them. He deliberately flips the pages at an excruciatingly slow pace, a move that also creates palpable pressure around you. No one knows which page he'll stop on or when he'll lay the next trap for you and Artem, only that he won't let you both off.
家族、被害者、当事者。ところで、ハイジャック犯や殺人犯などもそこに含まれるのですか？
The sound of papers being flipped stops all of a sudden and the deathly silence hangs in the air, making the frigid tone in his voice all the more piercing to your ears.
覆しようのない罪を犯した者を弁護することもあなたの正義だというのですか？弱者の味方をすることに快感を得ているのか、それとも単に注目を浴びたいだけなのか。
Controversial cases from before getting dug out once more points to nothing but ill intent, no different from each paper left out in the sun, discoloring and breaking down in new dawn.
それらの事件はすでに正当な判決が下されたものです。今回の査問会とは無関係かと。
過去のことだからこそ、あなたが売名にこだわっていたことを示す証拠になるんです。これが無関係だと
？Slamming his folder onto the glass table, Jung places his hand onto the edge of the table for support and leans unnecessarily forward, crossing even the center line of the table. To lawyers with experience in reading body language, this is an intentional move that disrespects one's personal space during an interaction, one that aims to evoke fear and discomfort in the other party.
事実はすでに明白です。
Confident that things will turn out his way, Jung speaks in a definitive tone to convict Artem of his wrongdoings.
左京さん、あなたは知名度のために人権派弁護士のイメージを築き、有志業者を利用したユーザーに悪意を持って接触しました。そして最高裁長官もあなたに便宜を図るべく、有志業者の持つ合法的な権利を奪うために動いた。
Threats, coercion, and false accusations. He plays every card that you and Artem had predicted. Despite the practice and mental preparation, you nevertheless find yourself smothered by the stressful situation before you. Artem's downcast eyes are trained on the table, as though whatever is reflected in the glass surface deserves his attention more than the fabricated allegations against him. He lightly rubs his knuckles on the table.
岩谷さん、バッジが汚れていますよ。
On hearing that, Jung instinctively looks down at his badge. The metallic coating has flaked off, resulting in traces of oxidation on the silver ornament. Where it is worn, the beige tarnished bramble branches now appear more like bloodthorns on his chest. A moment's distraction is all it takes for the tables to turn. Artem's voice then fills the room.
あなたの言う通り、私は最高裁長官の権力を借り、その事実を全員に知らしめました。ですが、たかが知名度を上げるためだけに、私がそこまでのことをすると？
Artem raises his chin slightly, revealing the blatant look of annoyance in his eyes.
それに、知名度であれば、あなた方が十分与えてくれましたよ。
何を言うかと思えば、もちろん背後により大きな目的があるのでしょう。まったく、気づかれていないとでもお思いですか。
Jung is unusually eager and spirited, like someone who believes that victory is theirs. That is also the key to turning the tide unnoticed.
新法が制定されれば、提案した最高裁長官の実績となるのはもちろん、あなたにも経済的な利益をもたらすでしょう。当然、儲けが出た協力者は惜しまず謝礼を渡すでしょうし、そうでなくとも多大な借りが残る。
要するに、収賄が発生すると？
そうです。
Artem scoffed offhandedly.
なるほど。確かに筋は通ってますね。ですが、一つ聞かせてください。あなたは今回の件で、ネット融資業者が被害を被ると断定していたようですが、その根拠は？
独自の調査ルートがあるんです。
なるほど。彼らのことをよく知っていると。あなたが過去に入れ込んでいた健康食品会社のようにですか？
Panic flashes across Jung's eyes the moment he hears healthcare company.
一体何の話ですか？それが査問会と何の関係があると？今はあなたの取り調べをしてるんです。無関係な発言で調査の邪魔をしないでください。
With a languid flick of his fingers, Artem fishes through the papers on the table before sliding 10 odd copies of scribbled charges over to the person opposite him.
調査の邪魔をするつもりはありません。ですが、あなたにその資格はない。我々は、ある資料を入手しました。岩谷さん、どうかこれを協会へ提出していただきたい。
Artem slouches back into his seat, stretching out a single hand to slide a mobile hard drive over to Jung. Jung reflexively takes a small step backward.
それは？
今のあなたが一番恐れているものです。
Mr. Jung, we found evidence to suggest you are guilty of using your position as a legal representative to accept bribes from others.
そんな、ありえない。
Although the tables have turned in that instant, the one who gets the last laugh is not thrilled in the slightest. There is only weariness and irritation on his countenance. Unwilling to spare his defeated opponent so much as a glance, Artem's gaze lingers over the frosted glass in the waiting room instead, a screen that bears a faded image of the bramble skills. Hotel room. Before the inquiry, you and Artem got your hands on the bank transactions of a group of illegal peer-to-peer lending companies, and so you dive right into your investigation. You go through the list to narrow it down to companies that Jung has interacted with. Then you go through it again to flag out unusual transactions to hopefully zero in on some useful clues. Luck is on your side, for you and Artem end up finding a chain of heavily nested shadow bank accounts. Unfortunately, without Jung's bank account details, there is no way for you to link the suspicious banking activity to him, much less ascertain his involvement. You have hit a roadblock in your plan. The neatly organized files before you seem to make up some kind of interconnected web, a web that traps all beneath the night sky.
落ち込む必要はない。融資会社の帳簿を確認できただけでも十分だ。岩谷の情報がない分、どうしても調査には時間がかかる。
But it's almost time for the inquiry. Time is just a thing we don't have. You splay across the table, resting your chin in your hands before spacing off. Say, do you think we're going in the wrong direction?
どうしてそう思うんだ？
If our goal is to find evidence of Jung engaging in illegal financial dealings, we can always look into other companies. Peer-to-peer lenders may be meticulous with their record keeping, but other companies may not share the same habit.
一理あるな。岩谷は何かと派手に動くところがあるから、もしどこかと癒着しているなら、相手も一社とは限らないはずだ。
When you and Artem pour over Jung's resume once more, you discover he had previously helped out in the marketing campaign of a healthcare business. Jung marketed this healthcare company in the exact same way he did for those peer-to-peer lenders.
ああ。この会社のことは私も覚えている。ちょうど去年あたりに財前が担当していた案件が、ここの債務問題だったはずだ。
So, Celestine might have accessed their transaction records back then.
すぐ彼女に確かめてみよう。
Several hours later, Artem received some data and a number of files on his computer. Among those records, multiple transactions point you toward a particular shadow bank account. The same shadow bank account also appears in the transaction records of more than one peer-to-peer lender. All of these seemingly unrelated companies only have one thing in common: dealing with Jung. If the events had to be placed on a timeline, Jung likely became the spokesperson of those peer-to-peer lenders shortly after the healthcare company found themselves in debt. I can't believe this guy, opening account after account, even before settling the previous one.
目先の資金不足を補うために、手段を選ばなかった結果かもしれないな。
Waiting room. The documents you provided are more than sufficient to begin an investigation on Jung. With this breakthrough, it wouldn't be long before you'll find more evidence to prove the illegal financial dealings between him and those peer-to-peer lenders. Staff members from the Lawyers Association soon come by to pick up your evidence submission and at the same time bring the spiteful Jung in for investigation.
左京さん、正直に答えてください。あなたは今まで一度も父親の権力を借りたことがないと、そう言い切れますか？
Artem pauses in the midst of handing over your collated evidence to the facilitating staff.
言えませんね。
そうだと思いましたよ。何を自分だけ善人ぶってるんですか。
Seeing how this might be his final chance, Jung lashes out at Artem in a savage, almost maniacal manner, no different from that of a caged beast. Artem's next word, however, dashed every last remnant of his delusion.
失敗や低迷期を経験しても、世に対して恨みを抱かずにいられる。これは、父から学んだ結果です。もしも、言っている権力がそれに該当するなら、あなたが想像しているよりも、ずっと多く借りていると思いますよ。それから、
Turning his attention away from the maniacal man, Artem directs his earnest gaze at you.
私のパートナーは、素晴らしい弁護士です。
You blink in confusion. Something flashes in your mind and you realize that statement is a correction to what Jung said earlier when you were reduced to being just Artem's fiancé outside of work partners. Self-doubt and indignance that manifested from the malicious and inciting remarks you've had to put up with within the last couple of days, and possibly from more criticism to come, all of those feelings seem to quell this very instant. Following Jung's removal for investigation, the inquiry is adjourned to the next day. Waiting room. The association sends a new officer to chair the inquiry. You also learn that Jung is now under investigation and that all relevant evidence has been passed on to the police.
では改めて、ただいまより行う査問会の公平性は、この私が担保いたします。なのでどうか今一度、我々教会を信じていただけないでしょうか。もし了承いただけるようでしたら、この度の告発の件について、お二人からのご説明をお願いいたします。
わかりました。
After taking a brief moment to organize your thoughts, both you and Artem respond in succession.
結論。ネット融資会社が作った契約書には問題があり、新法が制定されようとされまいと、彼らの融資が違法であることに変わりはありません。私が法律扶助を始めた動機についても、単に人助けがしたいというシンプルなものです。
Temis has always had the practice of taking on legal aid cases, and Mr. Wing makes it a point to help out with them every year. I cannot see any reason for him to do so just to gain fame. The inquiry soon comes to an end. Through your observation of the inquiry officer, she appears to be receptive, paying close attention to what is being said. You mentally let out a sigh of relief. It is only when Artem answers the inquiry officer's final question that she collects her papers and rises from her seat.
よくわかりました。これで質疑応答は終了とし、最後にいくつかの事実を照合させていただきます。そこまでお時間はかかりませんので、この部屋の近くでお待ちください。
Okay. Lounge. You and Artem exit the waiting room and head to the lobby's lounge to wait instead. Taking a seat on one end of the couch, you find yourself bathed in the warm and pleasant sunlight. The tension that you have been carrying lately begins to melt away. Your curious glances around the lobby attract Artem's attention, who turns to you with a quizzical look.
何か探しているのか？
Artem, is this where you had your award ceremony?
いや、会場は別の部屋だったな。
Artem looks around the place and memories from his past come rushing back to him.
だが、私が長時間待っていたのはこの部屋だ。
For uncle?
ああ。それと、ある答えも待っていた。
Holding onto his arm, you bat your eyelashes several times at Artem, unabashedly making your curiosity known to him. Deep down, you know Artem will satisfy your curiosity. He does not take well to letting people down after all. Artem clears his throat, awkwardly averting his gaze.
別に大したことではない。今にして思うと、当時の私はかなり未熟だったようだ。あの時、先生が励ましてくれなかったら、私はきっと。
Home.
もしもし、父さん、私です。
The call picks up on the other end, and Artem briefly tells his father about the invitation from the association. He pauses for a short while before going into the question.
その授賞式の当日なんですが、一応登壇してプレゼンをすることになっていて、父さんも来られそうですか？ 4 月26日です。はい。会場も首都にある弁護士協会です。いえ、忙しいのであれば大丈夫です。そこまで大したことでもないですから。
はあ、何が大したことないだ。お前の誕生日だろう。
Feeling a rough tug on his sleeves, the person standing next to him, his mentor, pointedly raises his eyebrows at Artem, impatiently hinting at something. Artem hurriedly places a hand over the receiver, hoping to muffle out his mentor's objection. His father says something on the other end, and Artem's eyes light up in response.
はい、わかりました。ではまた。
どうだ、時間を作ってくれそうか？
Immediately after he ends the call, his mentor excitedly asks about the outcome and receives a nod from Artem. His mentor is clearly more thrilled by the news than Artem should be.
これでこの間私にした質問も直接父親に聞けるな。お前の人生における悩みを解決するのは本来彼の役目だ。
はい、聞いてみます。
よし。では私は学校に戻る。
Neil Hume retrieves his coat and is about to leave when he suddenly turns around as though he randomly thought of something.
それとな、左京。自分のことを二の次にするような真似はやめろよ。
Artem is already lost in thought about the things he has to prepare: travel arrangements, his leave application, a suit, and a draft for his speech when he hears his mentor's advice. He looks up and breezily promises to take it to heart.
はい、わかりました。
Lounge. What did you want to ask, Uncle? Rather than the anticipation, disappointment, and regret in the emotionally charged second half of his recount, you are more interested in what is about to come. A young Artem, feeling perplexed and apprehensive about something, what sort of question could it be? Picking up on the burning curiosity in your eyes, Artem purses his lips.
あの時は、そうだな。父さんの期待通りに成長しているかどうか、聞きたかったんだと思う。きっと、多くの人がそのように尋ねたことがあるはずだ。
Artem hesitates a moment before continuing, as though he has finally come to a rigorously rough conclusion, almost like a deep introspection into himself.
より正確に言うなら、あの日は私が自分のために用意した自らを証明する場だったのだろう。例えるなら、春に芽生えた木が厳しい冬の試練を待ち望むような、そうすることでしか私は証明できないと思い込んでいたんだ。父さんや母さんにとって誇れる子に慣れていることを、そして彼らを失望させていないということを。
But as time goes by, the preparation that was once his basis of confidence gives way to the cracks of self-doubt. Sun rays scattered through the stained glass window, casting brilliant streams of light into the lobby, a lobby now distinct from the one in his memory.
後のことは 君も知っている通り、どれも大したこともない。
No, it's important. You squeeze his hand, urging him to meet your gaze. When this inquiry is over, let's go pay Uncle a visit and have him answer that long-awaited question.
それは、また随分と子供っぽく見えそうだな。だが、そうしようか。
Lounge. Shadows by the window elongate, and the stand-in inquiry officer reemerges at long last, informing you that you are free to leave.
以降の手続きでも何点かご協力いただくことになりますので、その際はまた改めてご連絡いたします。
はい。
Relief washes over you upon hearing the outcome. The inquiry may not be over just yet, but you've cleared this hurdle for now. You pick up your purse and are about to leave the building with Artem when the inquiry officer turns back towards you, seemingly remembering something.
左京さん。私はあなたのお父様を心から尊敬しています。もちろん賛同できない部分はありますが、彼が素晴らしい人であることに変わりはありません。
ええ。考え方に違いがあるのは普通のことです。今回の件で代価を払うべきなのは、悪意を持って中傷してきた者だけですよ。
After several days of furnishing information to the association and assisting in rounds of investigation, the inquiry proceeding finally comes to an end. The association's investigation clears Artem of any breach of conduct, finding the report to be falsely fabricated. Judging from the progress of the draft law, things seem to be resolved on Brian's end too. It's about time this storm quell. Study. On your second last day in the capital, you make plans with Artem to visit Brian before returning to Stelis. When you arrive, you learn from his secretary that Brian has gone out to take care of something that cropped up at work, and that your meeting today will have to be cancelled. With how busy Uncle gets, it doesn't look like he's going to be around for Artem's birthday again this year. And Auntie has been out of town at a conference for days now. No one knows when she'll be back. As if he has long gotten used to the spontaneous changes in his father's busy schedule, Artem casually suggests somewhere else to spend the day.
せっかく外に出てきたんだ。このまま散歩でもしないか。
Sure, though I'm not familiar with this area, I don't know what's nice around here.
では、この近くに公園があるから、そこで景色を楽しむとしよ
う。Let's go to that park then. Park. You walk hand in hand with Artem along a tree-lined path in the lovely weather, strolling leisurely around the park. You now realize what is it about this place that left an impression on Artem out of all the other sites in the capital. This is a tranquil park, a refuge within the city of skyscrapers. You have never felt this relaxed since arriving in the capital. What?
大丈夫か？
The unmistakable silhouette of a vendor and their flower cart on the other side of the circular fountain appear in your vision. You recall the promise you made a few nights ago at a certain street market. I'm going to keep my promise. I'll be right back. Artem blinks in confusion, and you pick up on the unfamiliar hesitation in his otherwise gentle tone.
ああ、なら、向こうのベンチで待っていようか。
Got it. With a spring in your step, you make your way to the flower cart only to be dazzled by the variety of flowers on display. In this very moment, you want to go beyond just keeping your promise. You hope to fulfill all the wishes he has had in the past before his next birthday. You hope to fix every instance of disappointment, especially the memory he has of that day. It should not be overshadowed by the bright colors in that room, nor drowned out in the chimes of the association's clock. Be it lofty goals, insignificant desires, or simple and mundane wishes, you hope to fulfill every one of them for him, in the same way he has been regarding you with fervent affection and an open heart all this while. This will do. Please wrap them into a bouquet for me. Perhaps because you spent quite some time picking out flowers, you realize you now cannot wait to be back by Artem's side. You go back down the same path you came from, slowing down your pace as the sun sets, all the while holding onto a small bouquet of flowers that has been secured with ribbon. Artem is leaned back on the bench, his eyes closed. He seems to have fallen asleep, oblivious even to being bathed entirely in the warm glow of the setting sun. Not wanting the strong floral scent to startle him awake, you hide the flowers behind your bed before sneaking up to him, though you find yourself gingerly leaning in to watch him sleep. Artem's brow furrows, indicative of a less than peaceful sleep, you cannot help but wonder what he's dreaming of. Putting on a tough front when he hasn't slept well for a number of days now. Pulling out a lily from the bouquet, you reach across to pin the flower on the pocket of Artem's shirt, breaking the stillness of the scene. The setting sun casts a shadow of the lily on Artem's chest, one that resembles a patch between his two shirt buttons, squarely over where his heart is. No matter what the future holds, you drop your voice to a whisper to not disturb his sleep, though you also hope for your words to find their way through the meshwork of negative thoughts to comfort him in his dreams. The kiss that stopped just inches away from your forehead comes to mind, and you realize when you love someone this deeply, every decision you have to make becomes laden with a weight. Unfaltering support is found only between those with hearts aligned. I'll always be by your side.
ああ、
A response from the man you thought was asleep all along makes you jump, and you almost drop your bouquet of flowers. Weren't you sleeping? Artem still has his eyes closed and appears to be deep in slumber, though the corners of his lips are clearly upturned.
寝ているさ。今は夢を見ている。
A warm breeze characteristic of late spring swept past, rustling the nearby foliage and tossing the wisps of hair hanging over Artem's forehead. Is it a dream where everything goes your way? Better not be a nightmare though, or I'll wake you up right now.
どっちでもない。
Another breeze sweeps through his parted bangs, as though even Mother Nature is bent on smoothing out the creases in his forehead. The arm that is exposed in the air flinches slightly, and Artem purses his lips.
大勢の人が集まり、勝利を祝っている夢を見た。犠牲の多い勝利だったがゆえに、勝者は声を上げて泣いていた。
When Artem opens his eyes, he appears to be in a daze, sleep still heavy in his eyes. Not budging from his comfortable position on the bench, he tilts his head slightly to look at you.
私たちも苦労して勝利を収めたばかりだったな。相手はこちらがよく知る規則や手続きと過去の栄光だった。
His words convey none of the pride or elation that usually comes with winning, only the mental and physical exhaustion from being a brutal and protracted battle to its end. Considering it a drill for a future battle, victory or loss, it will be an outcome of feast with you together. Autumn squints just as the golden hour rolls around, bathing him in the soft and warm glow of the setting sun. Go on, take a nap. I'll wake you up before the next nightmare creeps in.
ああ。
surrounding winds still, and both your shadows grow longer as the sun dips below the horizon. As it turns out, you spend a leisurely day nuzzled up against Artem on a park bench, catching up on a long nap before walking home hand in hand. Study. Upon returning from the capital, both you and Artem find yourself buried in a mountain of work that accumulated while you were away. You enter the weekend soon after clearing the more pressing tasks. Your plan for the weekend is just to lounge at home, unwinding from work over a book or a movie, with Artem, of course. Artem stands before his bookcase, browsing for a good few minutes before turning around to address you.
あそこにある黄昏に立つ砕氷船が見えるか？
Yeah, it's on the second shelf. I'll get it for you. Just as you pick out the book, you hear both the doorbell and Artem's phone ringing at the same time. Artem looks at his phone and you in turn glance toward the door. Could be a delivery. I'll get the door. Go ahead and take your call. Absent-mindedly placing the book back on the topmost shelf, you jog toward the door. The coffee mugs that you recently bought couldn't have arrived at a better time. Once you are done rinsing them, you bring the mugs over to Artem, only to find him spacing out at his phone. Who was it?
父さんからだ。
You can hear some hesitation in his voice as he received his mug from you.
明日、首都の方に帰る前に、うちに寄って顔を見ておきたいそうだ。
Oh, at our apartment. Should we start studying the place? Artem sets his mug down before using his free hand to envelope yours.
そう身構えなくてもいい。忙しいあの人のことだ。言葉通り、少し話したら帰るつもりだろう。
That may be true, but I can't help feeling... Artem smiles wryly, tucking a lost lock of hair behind your ear.
本音を言うと、私も少し緊張している。前回のことがあったからな。謝ればいいのか、挨拶をすればいいのか。
You know that was Artem trying to make you feel better, but you fail to hold in your laughter all the same. Along with the laugh that escaped your lips, the tension that you have been holding in also dissipates. This is your chance to finally help Artem relay the question that he didn't get to ask before. The following day, Brian arrives in Stellis and visits the two of you at your new apartment. Study. The scent of coffee wafts through the study as Artem sets his mug down on the desk, walking toward Brian, who is still perusing your bookcase. Brian stands before the bookcase, his gaze sweeping across the titles of neatly arranged books on each shelf. He then smiles and points out one of the reference books on comparative law.
これはもう新しい改訂版が出ているから、古いのは読まない方がいい。ちょうど最新のセットを持ってきているから、これを使いなさい。
わかりました。
A thought pops into your head as you look at the two men before you. Oh, how thoughtful. This must be Uncle's birthday present to Artem, isn't it? Brian gives a slight nod, acknowledging your guess in a way. A sheepish smile forms on Artem's face.
ありがとうございます。
Spotting a book sticking out from the topmost shelf, Artem reaches out to shove it back into place. This move, however, pushes the book, which was already on the verge of falling off, into a more precarious position. He pauses for a moment but decides to leave the book where it is, turning around to face his father.
父さんの方の問題は落ち着きましたか？それと、あの日は忠告をないがしろにして、
謝る必要はない。だがそうだな。大切な人を守るためにも、今後はもう少し慎重に動いた方がいいだろう。なりふり構わず行動していては、いずれ相手の術中にはまることになる。
Artem does not answer right away, cleverly putting out a condition of his own before agreeing to take his father's advice.
私からも一つお願いがあります。今後、もしまた危険な状況に陥った際は、必ず私たちに連絡してください。
ああ。
Long threatening to tip over the book ice-breaking departing at dusk chooses to topple off the shelf this very instant, landing with an audible thud that resounds in the momentary silence. Artem bends over to pick up the book, and a voice rings out from before him at the same time. Almost like a heartfelt rumination on the fateful turn of events, though uttered with a calm acceptance and none of the intense emotions.
法律の制定は一瞬の戦いに過ぎないが、そのための努力は決して無駄ではない。
The novel that fell has been flipped open to its title page, revealing only a one-liner that the author quoted in their epigraph. I have fought every good fight out there, and I am already far along the path I should take.
法律の威信と秩序の保持は、世界が果てるまで続けなくてはならない。
Autumn stands back up slowly, his gaze going past the impressive collection of books on the philosophy of law to land on his father standing just 1 foot away. The creation of laws, the nature of law, and the legal system are all easily within reach, yet tons of people continue to devote their lifetime to their pursuit of those theories.
お前がたどる道は私とは違うだろう。だが、一度決めた道は最後まで進みなさい。たとえその先で私と対峙することになったとしても。
But uncle... Brian glances at each of you before continuing in a casual tone.
何を緊張しているんだ。君たちが選んだ道は君たちが想像しているよりも敵が多いということだ。さて、私はそろそろ失礼しようか。本の入れ替えを忘れないようにな。
Huh? You're leaving already? You had assumed Brian would stay around longer, especially when you haven't gotten around to asking the question that has been weighing on Artem's heart. Your heart reacts before your mind, and you take a step forward. Let me walk you out. Averting Artem's inquiring eyes, you hurriedly rack your brains for a decent excuse. I read one of your papers in the past, and I've had quite some questions about it. I've always wanted to ask you about them.
な、いいだろう。
Neighborhood. As you walk Brian downstairs, you play out 100 different ways to broach the subject in your head.
論文というのはただの口実で、私に何か聞きたいことがあるのだろ？
Yes, you're right. Your mental predicament from earlier disappears now that your motive is seen through, leaving out Arthur's feeling of anticipation and disappointment during the ceremony of the past. You come straight to the point and ask what Arthur wanted to know back then. Brian falls silent for a very long time, as though his memories have taken him back in time.
どう答えたらいいかわからないが、当時の静馬にはもう明確な信念と守るべき秩序があった。故に誰かからの期待に応える必要はなかったんだ。それに私が同じ年だった頃と比べても、静馬は私よりずっと優秀だった。
Perhaps it's the unnerving uncertainty that clouded your judgment when you were in the capital, but you realize Brian is a lot more affable than the last time you met him.
とはいえ、信念というのは驚くほどに脆い。恩師や仲間、そして最愛の人を奪うだけで、人は簡単に打ちのめされる。そうなれば、たとえ進むべき道があったとしても、足を踏み出すたびに迷いが生まれ、進めなくなるんだ。
I will fight alongside him.
あ、君たちなら乗り越えられるだろうな。だが、それでも自分の子供が恐怖と苦痛に苛まれることを良しとする親などいない。もちろん、あの子が最後まで耐え抜ける子だと知っていたとしてもだ。
A set of thoughts escapes with his final words before transiting into a friendly reminder for you.
これは、静馬には言わないでおいてほしい。
Yeah, I will. After watching the car that Brian got into drive off, you jog home excitedly, eager to tell Artem about the conversation that just transpired. A familiar silhouette enters your vision right as you go around the neighborhood park. The person who has been running through your mind for the last couple of minutes appears in front of you. What are you doing out here? You spot Artem leaning against a hedge at the end of the stone-slabed walkway, his gaze obscured by the thick foliage overhead. Artem tilts his head to the side, his eyes now visible from all that lush greenery.
部屋に一人でいるのもあれだからな。
A sweet happiness bubbles within you, and you skip toward him, joining him between the verdant hedges. Listen. I chatted a lot with Uncle. I need to tell you everything now before I forget. Not stopping to catch your breath, you recount every single word of your earlier conversation with Brian. When you finally finish the long recount, Artem has no reaction whatsoever. Too little, too late?
いや、そんなことはない。ただ、ふと気づいたんだ。あの時、私は待ち続けている間に、自分に答えを与えていたんだ。過去のものよりも、今を大事にすべきだと。
What you have before you? It is quite around you. Other than the warm springtime sun, you are the only two people here. Maybe there's also the birds perched atop the streetlights, the endlessly buzzing bugs, and the dense canopy of leaves secretly listening in on your conversation.
首都から帰ってきた後、君にいろいろと話したいことがあったが、どこから話せばいいかわからなかった。
What is it?
本当は父さんに言われるまでもなく、敵が多いことは分かっていたんだ。私という人間がどんな人物なのか、世間は気にしてなどいない。イメージなど、いくらでも捏造できるし、いつだって壊せるからな。故に、身分も地位も名誉も、他人から与えられた一切合切は、急に失われる可能性がある。もしもこの先で、私がそれらを失うことがあれば、その時は。
That won't happen. You anxiously begin to interrupt him, but you also recall what Brian said that you haven't seen the real threat yet. It doesn't take much to crush a person. All they need to do is target his mentor, his friends, or even the person he loves. When that happens, he's as good as crippled even if he still remembers his goal, because none of the path ahead of him will take him toward it. Will things really turn out that way? The anxiety that courses through you overpowers even the permeating scent of flowers in the air, gripping you in a chokehold and crushing your weak denial before it can be uttered. A gust of wind rustles past your ear, pushing a branch between the two of you. This unexpected intrusion breaks you out of your thoughts, and you raise your hand to shield your face from the branch. At the exact same moment, Artem reaches out to push the branch further down past his eyes. Amidst the fluttering petals, you find yourself looking into his eyes, the calmness in his eyes.
そうなったとしても、私は平気だ。ただ、君がしてくれた、一緒に歩み続けてくれるという約束に、それ以上に価値のあるお返しができるか、心配なんだ。
Artem tilts his head to the side as though there really is a selection of gifts before him, leaving him spoiled for choice. After what seems like a deep contemplation, he brings his face toward your ear.
そうだな。この枝を借りよう。今後どんなことが起ころうと、万物はきっと神聖を迎えるだろう。
It is the end of spring. Vines and branches have grown long resilient, along with flowers you cannot put a name to, every single one of them blooming vibrantly from their buds. You hear Autumn's voice right as the wind stills, making your heart skip a bit.
江南にあるところなし。
If nothing in Jiangnan can convey your feelings, then let the flowers around you become a symbol of them. Flowers bloom far and wide whenever spring rolls around, so let that be both a sight and reminder that you can perennially indulge in. You feel something tug at your heartstrings, and you reciprocate with your own feelings 1,001 times, though only in your head, for you cannot seem to find your tongue. The road ahead may be difficult from here on out. Loss and separation may be inevitable to reach your goal, or worse still, ruination is all there is at the end of the road. But so long as he is with you, you know you will become each other's beacon for the way forward, regardless of having your hopes dashed or your goal destroyed. Before the remaining flowers wither, you stand on tiptoes and kiss him on the lips. It is an invitation to dive into the river of love together, to stand steadfast by each other's side, a vow for a lifetime. Whether spring flashes by lightning or winter settles in with its biting chill, your promise endures unshaken and eternal.
私だ。メッセージを見て、落ち着いたようだからかけさせてもらった。ああ、式典は終わった。学生に賞を渡すことに思い入れはないが懐かしかったな。うん。式典が終わった後に質問攻めにされた。どれもいい疑問で、とある生徒は理想と現実の差を見て未来に迷ったそうだ。なぜかその時、君の顔が頭をよぎった。学生の頃、悩みはあったか？いや、助言はない。ただあの時、君に会えていたら、私は君が話しやすいような、聞き役に徹していただろう。君の悩みを聞き、静かにうなずき、その気持ちにきっと寄り添うだろう。そして答えが出なかった時は、一緒に迷えばいい。何も気にせず、朝から夕方まで、共に過ごしながら、夜を待ち、明日を迎えよう。私は君のことをもっと知りたい。喜怒哀楽や、すべてを。帰ったら、話してくれるのか？約束だ。 今そこの扉を開けたら、君がいたらいいんだが。今の、バカな話だと思うか？うん。その通りだ。私は、会いたい。なるべく早く片付けて帰るから。うん。また後で。